I was incredibly pleased when Sandfall Interactive sent over a review key for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, as it's easily become one of my most anticipated games since the reveal at the Xbox Game Showcase last year. I finally had the chance to delve into this beautiful looking world of Lumiere and the continent, figuring out the story behind the paintress and joining the expedition as they ventured forth into exhilarating exploration and also combat. This has easily got to be one of the most interesting and unique games of 2025 so far, and it's hard to believe that this is the studio's first foray into the gaming sphere. This is a hugely ambitious title that is quite clearly going toe-to-toe with some of the heaviest of hitters within the turn-based space. So is this game a work of art, or is it a mistake waiting to be put out of its misery? Well, my name is Fletcher, and this is Xbox Nation, and here is my review and performance analysis of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. First up, I will cover the story and what you can expect within the world of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I will say right now that there are no story spoilers here in this review, that's on screen and in the script, and Sandfall Interactive have put strict guidelines on what I can mention story-wise within this review, especially as I don't want to spoil late game characters, bosses, and so much more. As a bit of an overview though, the city that you inhabit is called Lumiere, and this is part of a vast land called the continent. In essence, there was a fracture which occurred many years ago, in which a mysterious paintress appeared and started counting down from the year 100. After each year, she writes a new number on the monolith in countdown style, and everyone of that age dies in what is called a gamage. Due to this happening, teams of volunteer expeditioners with 1 year left of their life are sent out to the continent in hopes of destroying the paintress and stopping this cycle from continuing forever. That is a very brief overarching look at the story, but let me tell you, the story takes many twists and turns, and overall you'll be going into this game expecting one thing and coming out the other end either confused, bewildered, or very shocked. The game is very dark in its tone. Its story is about family, loss, betrayal, and the deeper meaning behind the paintress, and this story is an incredible feat by the developers over at Sandfall Interactive. This is an incredibly mature title where not only does the story bring in some evocative themes, but the characters within this world are deeply centered, and you can tell that they're of an older age. Never have I gone into a game and come out the other end with a different perspective, and every single character, NPC, and boss within this world leaves an everlasting impact on your mind. There are very few games out there that I've ever seen part of this industry that really nails these notes, and making you ponder what you've experienced upon closing the game, or just wrapping it up after the 30 hours of playtime for the main story alone. Now, the world of Clair Obscur is very vast, and the continent you will be exploring has many aspects to it, and environmentally, they are all stunning and contain a wide variety of different biomes and art directions. The worlds here have been so expertly crafted, and there are so many unique aspects that you never feel tiresome or bored of seeing the same old thing. There are shifting environments in the different areas within the enclosed play spaces, so much so that you can go back to each of them and there is still so much for you to explore or just take in this surreal environments. There is also a ton for you to investigate, and that also comes in the form of side missions, collectibles, unique environmental puzzles, and so much more. The game really rewards you for exploring off the beaten path, but it also rewards you for going back to areas that you once experienced to actually track down different paths and take on higher level enemies that you once couldn't take on. When going around the continent though, either that being on foot or via your companion known as SK, you will stumble across these glowing sort of entrances. Upon finding one you want to dive into, that being for the main story or an odd shot area, you walk up to these entrances, and once entered, you basically go into a sort of enclosed play space, and let me tell you, each of these sections is absolutely massive. It was like a game within a game, and my mind was still blown with how many areas that you'll actually come across. There are no maps either inside of these massive worlds, and that makes navigating them a matter of tracing your own footsteps, or if you're new to exploring the area, finding out what striking image could be sitting just around the corner. The only negative about this exploratory element is that within some areas you will be warned with a danger sign, which is kind of great to give you a sort of visual cue as to when areas are way out of your level. However, the issues do arise when exploring the continent with SK, and enemies or boss encounters are not actually presented in any leveling fashion or have no warning signs at all. I did have many instances where I tried to take on a boss thinking I could potentially battle them, only to find out I was still not a high enough skill level and die instantly. It does get a bit frustrating as you feel like you're wasting your time, and I feel some sort of visual cue stating that these bosses are a bit higher than your level would have been welcome. I know this will be a bit more of a personal preference to some of you out there, but for me it just seemed a bit too tedious. So the characters within Clair Obscur really are the main draw for me, and I can see many of you loving the different personalities and quirks of each of these characters. Along the way, you will come across different faces, some of which become recruitable to your cause and others who will disperse, but all of which have unique abilities and different dialogue options that they never become dull or lackluster. Instead, the voice acting, stylization and personality of each friendly and enemy character is so marvelously articulated that they are hard to ever leave your mind. You have the incredible Jennifer English really bringing to life the hardship and struggles of the young expeditioner called Maëlle. On the other hand, you also have the excellent Andy Serkis, who plays the dastardly Renoir, and let me tell you, that character really does stand out. It is just so hard not to spew out loads of insight and excellent moments that occur with each of these characters, and it's so easy to see how much the voice talent and developers have poured their heart and souls into this project. They looked ripped right out of a major blockbuster movie, and the art direction and cinematic presentation here is just outstanding. As you may have seen, the big reservation for many out there has to be that the combat system is turn-based. I will say though that whether you're just an impatient gamer or someone who prefers more action-centric combat, your guess is as good as mine as to why many JRPGs are actually shying away from this format. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 takes an approach where players must time button presses to boost their attacks or defenses further. You can dodge, parry, or jump to avoid enemy attacks, and these actions need to be mastered in order for you to survive. I will say though, a bit of a negative which I did come across my playtime was that dodging and parrying can sometimes get a bit hit or miss. I had so many instances where I would parry or dodge specifically on an audio or visual cue and still get hit. It's only a minor gripe and it didn't happen all too often, but some refinement is definitely needed. When in battle though, you will have a fair few attacks at your disposal. Turn-based is a great element within this game, and I can see why Sandfall went for this traditional route. The main sole purpose is that it allows you to not only plan when and what enemy to attack or disable, but also figure out what elemental abilities or skills will become effective at taking down your foes. Your regular attacks in this game can be used at any time, and when used gains you action points, otherwise known as AP. You can also gain AP by perfectly parrying or dodging enemies when they attack you, and then these points can be used for your abilities or your gun. The free aim gun is incredibly effective at taking down flying enemies or taking down weak points and consumes 1 AP per shot. You then have your different abilities, and this is where the real meat of the combat comes into the mix. Each of the characters that form your expedition have their own set of skills that make them incredibly unique to use, and also quite hard to master at the same time. You have the regular attacks and overcharge abilities of Gustav, who is your sort of straightforward attacking style character, to the shape-shifting style and versatility of the gestural known as Monaco, who not only requires you to think about a specific combat wheel during combat to maximize his abilities, but can also learn new skills by collecting dead Neveron feet who you defeat in battle. There is a ton of variety here to really make the expedition party your own, and there are so many combinations at your disposal at all times. To put it frankly, this game is basically a better Final Fantasy X in almost every single aspect. Following on from the combat though, skills in this game are very vast and vary in so many ways. I briefly touched on the abilities, but this is only one area of the entire skill list. You first have what are called Pictos and Lumina. These are scattered throughout the world or are acquired upon defeating enemies or different bosses. You can equip up to 3 Pictos at one time per character, and these give you increases to stats and grant passive Lumina abilities. After 4 battles with a specific Picto, it becomes mastered, and the Lumina abilities actually get unlocked. Lumina abilities can then be equipped to any character using Lumina points, and you can experiment with different combinations to find effective and evolving strategies. Alongside these two as well, you also have the traditional weapon upgrades and skill points, which of course grant you better power, new abilities, and so much more. Equipment though does become very important here alongside the skills, as they not only grant you more damage, but also have extra statistics and variables that can be unlocked upon leveling them or using them in battle. You will for example have a sword which does fire damage, and then another that does lightning damage. It will then be up to you to interchange these before or after battles, as different enemies become weakened depending on the elemental affinities. Skills are also fairly straightforward though when it comes to a turn-based RPG, and of course these get unlocked upon fulfilling certain criteria within different characters. These can then be assigned and use different amounts of action points in your combat. It's all a juggling act of making sure you have the abilities that work for you and also complement your very own playstyle, and to be honest, this is where the game succeeds massively. It really makes you work out different combinations, strategies, and so much more, and there is a ton for you to just dive into. Attribute points do of course make an appearance, and your character will gain 3 of them upon a level up. You can spend these to increase the associated combat stats and further customize and refine your party. You can also recoat these at any time as well using different items which are fairly frequent throughout the world, and if you're stuck on a boss and want to take a different approach, then you can do so entirely from the different menus. Now, I know that one aspect that many of you will be interested in hearing is how the game performance holds up across both the Xbox Series X and the Series S consoles. So I spent about 50% of my time on each of these consoles as I was traveling whilst playing the game, so I got to experience a very large portion of the game to really give my overall thoughts and hands-on with it on both of the consoles. So the Xbox Series X first off has a performance and a quality mode. Of course that means either a 60 FPS experience with a lower image quality or a 30 FPS experience with a higher quality preset. As you can imagine, this means the Series S does only come with a standardized option, and that is currently sitting at a 30 FPS. Frame rate wise though, the game is fairly stable for the most part on both consoles. However, I did have some dips mainly on the Series S during very intense combat sequences or when loading into new areas for the very first time. I do have to say though that both of the consoles run this fairly well, and visually they both look stunning. I feel that if you're playing on a Series S, you'll have a wonderful time, and if you're playing on an Xbox Series X, then the image quality is absolutely superb. So for this final conclusion, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 really is a standout with the turn-based RPG genre, and Sandfall Interactive have really brought the mechanics up to snuff to suit modern RPG standards to rival the big hitters like Final Fantasy. The world here is insanely detailed and absolutely gorgeous. The combat, although having slight pitfalls, is incredibly interesting and majorly addictive, and the main highlight has to easily be the story, the characters, and those jaw-dropping cinematics that are seen throughout the experience. I went into Clair Obscur with an open mind, thinking it was going to be another run-of-the-mill turn-based RPG with some good visuals. However, I was absolutely blown out the water in every single way. For that reason, I will be giving Clair Obscur Expedition 33 a massive 9.2 out of 10. This is a turn-based RPG that will truly stay with you many days, months, and years after the release, and I can tell this is going to be one that will change your mind if you've never been into these sort of turn-based RPG experiences. I loved my time with this game, and I heavily recommend buying it or diving into it if you have Xbox Game Pass right now. So, are you going to be diving into Clair Obscur Expedition 33? Let me know down below along with your thoughts on this experience once you played it, as I am here to hear your opinion on this new IP. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this review, and subscribe for more Xbox news, reviews, and updates every single day. Whilst here though, why don't you check the video out on screen now, as I covered the 13 brand new Xbox and Game Pass games that are releasing this week, and if any of them are worth your time and money.